Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the REDX podcast, where real estate professionals can discover tips, tricks, habits, and hacks from top performing agents and coaches. My name is Haley Johnson. I'm the host today, and I am super excited for today's guest. We've got Matthew here with us, and he's going to be sharing his expertise on real estate finances and financial tracking. So we've got a ton of valuable information coming your way. So welcome to the show, Matthew. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing awesome. One of the funny things about that intro, which I love, is that most real estate agents just heard you do that and they think I'm like an accountant or a bookkeeper, and they literally, like, half of them probably just fell asleep. They were like, oh my God, finance guy, this guy's going to be so boring. Like, it's going to be percentages and numbers, but really, really important part of that dialogue is for everyone who's listening to know I am the farthest thing from a finance guy. I am straight up dyed in the wool real estate sales professional, been in the real estate business since 2006. And just like most of the people listening, I am great with people and terrible with numbers. It is not my strength. And so, I think one of the things that makes that kind of a unique story, though, is that over the course of my tenure in the business and building the #1 production real estate team in the state of Connecticut, what's happened is I've gotten really good at numbers because it meant that I got to make more money. It meant that I got to keep more money, and it meant that I got to grow my business faster and more effectively. So I just want everyone to know we are not going to be doing any math. There will be no math during this podcast. So
hey, that's perfect. That's a perfect introduction, because I think I like how you said that you weren't good at it. You're not good at it. You don't have a sharp skill in it, but you figured it out. So I'm excited to talk about this and help other agents who probably feel maybe intimidated by my first opening line as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, this is not like there is not a single person that said, like, hey, I'd love to be a real estate agent because I like spreadsheets. Like, those two things don't go together, So I have found that the most productive, most successful real estate agents really do embrace this, even though it's a pain point for most of us. And I hope that today in our conversation, I can inspire a few people to cross over to the dark side and start looking at their numbers a little bit more intently.
That's awesome. Thanks. Thank you so much. Well, as always, this is a participatory event. So whether you're joining us on YouTube or Facebook or on our website, anything like that, if you have questions for Matt, please chat them in and we'll do our best to get them answered today. And also, as a reminder, that we have changed the schedule of these podcasts. We've been doing them Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Matt. So this is the first Thursday podcast we've had of the REDX podcast. So that's exciting. But we will be going live every Thursday from now on at the same time, 1:30 Mountain Time. So let's get started. Matt, let's just jump in to our discussion today. I know you've kind of scratched the surface on where you started and how you kind of got into all of this, but I want to hear more of your story and why you are an expert or just like have figured this finance thing out.
Yeah, I mean, I think unfortunately it's probably all too common of a story, and there's probably a lot of listeners that are going to relate. I spent the first 10 years of my career in a corporate environment. I was in professional advertising sales. In the early 2000s, I started investing in real estate. I thought this is really cool. Remember that time frame too. Money was everywhere and it was really easy to be an investor. So I thought I was brilliant. I wasn't brilliant, but I thought I was. So I thought, geez, if I were to, really want to, play out my life story, I'd just jump into this thing full time. So around 2006, I got my real estate license. Fast forward 2 years, I went full time into the industry right around the early 2008. Perfect timing, Enron was November. So, I mean, I came in just as we were, soaring off the cliff. The reality, though, is that I had what many real estate agents have, which is a natural aptitude for, relationship building and sales. I was really good at establishing, good communication skill sets and delivering what I thought was a great service forward product for customers. So I was really heavy into lead generation. I was calling FSBOs, expireds. I was using products like REDX back in the early days, and I was really, really committed to the idea that I could build this big, big business just by doing the things that I was good at. And on some level, that was true because the industry very quickly started to celebrate my success. So 2009, 2010, I'm selling lots of houses. I'm the #1 agent in my office in 2011. I'm getting medals. I'm getting plaques. All of a sudden, they're asking me to teach. And I'm like, man, I'm awesome, right? But the actual reality was, my life was a disaster. Nobody knew that. Like, that wasn't a visible thing, but my actual life was a mess because I had 2 young kids under 4 years old. I was working 7 days a week to sell, 50 houses a year. And I wasn't really making any money. I was generating income, but my actual take home at the end of the day, it was just all I could do to just keep up with selling another house. And so the net at the end of the day was ultimately zero, because what happened in the real wake-up call for me was about 4 years into the business, really 3 years in full-time committed into the business. In 2011, #1 agent in my office. I got my 1099. It was January of 2012. I'll never forget this moment. It was a life-changing moment. I opened the mailbox. My 1099 came. Every real estate agent here can relate to this. You get the 1099 and you open it like it's a Christmas present because you can't wait to figure out how much money you made, which is now I think back 7 years, how insane that was, that you're running a business. You don't actually know how much money you made. It's nuts to think that was how I did it. But that's how I did it. I opened it up like a Christmas present. Oh my God, I know that I'm great at this job. Everybody tells me I'm great. I wonder how much money I made. And I looked at the number and it said I made $330,000, which was more money than I could have ever imagined I'd make. And yet the reality still was, when I went in the house with the mail in hand to tell my wife, she looked at me like she wanted to cut my head off, because she was like, where the hell's all that money? Like, what are you talking about? You made $330,000. I don't have enough money in the bank to pay the car payments, the mortgage next month. And oh, by the way, the other dirty, nasty little thing that was sneaking and hiding under a bush was that the IRS had a bill that I had to pay that I just sort of forgot about, right? But April 15th, I owed them about 30% of that money, which I didn't have. And so oftentimes when I tell that story, people start asking well, geez, dude, what'd you do with $330,000? What were you taking, limousines to listing appointments or private jets around the country? And it's it wasn't any of that. It was just absolutely a lack of financial aptitude around what was actually happening. The reality, those first couple of years when I was in the business, I was accumulating a ton of debt. I was accumulating debt because my business hadn't off yet. And so in order to keep the debt alive and keep my lights on, I was filling a hole that I had dug over the course of several years, including, by the way, a bunch of rental properties and investment properties that I bought at the peak that were no longer at the peak. So I had this whole mess of a world that I didn't pay any attention to. But what I did know is I knew how to sell. And so my logic was always, it doesn't really matter how big the debt is. I'll just go sell another house. But that's an absolutely failing strategy, because there's literally a limit to how much time you can put in and go sell houses. So it was a broad, bold wake-up call for me. And it was in that moment when I actually sat down and I asked myself, do I really want to do this? Is there actually a plan? Or am I going to have to go bankrupt? And, the good fortune for me is that I had great mentors in my life who sat me down and got real with me in the way that I hope to get real with the agents that are listening here today, that if you don't master the language of your finances, you are doomed to repeat the same story over and over again. Go ahead. Yeah.
It sounds like it doesn't really matter how much money you make. Like you said, sub 300,000 a year sounds like you're successful. Like you're doing well for yourself. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much you make. It matters how much you kept, right? That you didn't.
Yeah, And you actually, the way you just segued into that is really important. What I think real estate agents, like our industry, just simply does not operate by the same rules that the rest of the world operates on. And it's like a bold, harsh wake-up call. So we have an industry that is incredibly, it's awesome because it's a very low barrier to entry, which means that anybody can get in and build a massive, massive life for themselves, right? But that low barrier to entry also means that the people that are engaging and getting successful quickly sometimes don't have those sort of, myself included, we don't have that kind of like basic business skill set or business knowledge. So when the commission checks show up, they come with our name on them. And so our expectation is that, well, I mean, Haley, if I were to give you a check with your name on it, whose money is that when I give it to you?
It's mine.
Yeah, but when you're a real estate agent, it's actually not. And that's the thing that's really tough for people to get their head around, because that $330,000, which had my name on every one of those checks and my name on the 1099, that wasn't really my money. See, 30% of it belonged to the government, right? After you have write-offs and all that stuff, but about 30% of it belonged to the government because I was using the roads and the military and all those other things that we pay taxes for in the schools and all that, right? But then there was this other thing that a whole bunch of that money belonged to my business, because my business, it eats a certain amount of money every month in order for the lights to stay on. I have an office and marketing and advertising. At that point, I had an assistant. So I had payroll, which meant that I also had health insurance to pay and I had all these other expenses that were all bundled up into the $330,000. Plus, by the way, I had debt that I had accumulated in order to get that business off the ground. That was also owned by the business. And so that of the 330,000, the amount that was actually mine was probably like 65 or 70,000, which was enough for us to keep the lights on, but not enough for me to ever get wealthy, not enough for me to actually live a life. But I was living as if I was making $330,000 because that's the way the rest of the world works. But it's not how real estate works. And so you have to get you really have to change your thinking around what that money is. And that's the trick. That's the challenge. And that's what most agents run into, is that they need somebody to sit down and teach them how to do that.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people get into real estate because they want to have their own business and they want to have the luxuries of not reporting to a boss or having a 9-to-5. But it comes with its drawbacks, right? That you do have to recognize that you are now the financial advisor. You're now in charge of all these funds and stuff that you're bringing in. Whereas, like, if you are at a 9-to-5 job, you get a paycheck and you're good. That's yours.
And what happens is real estate agents become bank account bookkeepers, right? Which is a term that I sort of I've come up with. That what you do is you look at your bank account, and if there's money in there, you're like, oh, cool, that means I can spend. Right. But that's not actually how it works, because some of that money doesn't belong to you. Some of that money is going to be due to the IRS. Some of that money your business is going to need in the next 30 days in order to keep the lights on. But we see the check come in, and when the balance is high, we spend it. And then when it's low, we freak out and we make more calls, and we call REDX and say, I need more leads, right? Or we do stuff like that. And that's just not the foundation. There's no successful business that actually runs that way, And so in order to really build a huge successful business, real estate agents need to get super clear about what the flow of money is inside of the business and how that works. And it's a mindset shift. So it's like, that's the first thing you have to know, is that, look, unless you have a background in bookkeeping and accounting, you're probably doing it wrong. There's no judgment in that. It's just probably you're doing it wrong, because most agents are doing it wrong. I've taught classes. I've probably spoken to over 5,000 real estate agents about this topic in the last 6 years. And this is a 95% 95% of agents are not managing their finances correctly. And that's why they're kind of doomed to repeat the same cycles. So,
right. So, and when you came to a point where you were like, when you got your 1099 and you're like, this has got to change. I have a family to provide for, right? And all the things that you wanted. So what you said that you got a mentor and coaches and things like that. So if a new agent is in the business or someone is in the same situation where they're like looking at their bank account every day, hoping that they make it to the end of the month or whatever, where did you start to find out all of these things?
Yeah, great question. So it's hard, because the reality was that when I had the wake up call, It wasn't as simple as just calling somebody and saying like, hey, look at all my finances were a mess. Like there were shoeboxes full of receipts, a random spiral notebook with mileage tracking in it that was only really recorded up to March, like in the rest of the year, like everything was just a mess. And so the unwinding was really the most painful part. So I would say this, the first place that I stopped and I just said, I'm going to get clarity. And from this point forward, I'm going to do it right. So what stops most agents is that they're stuck on the fact that everything's a mess in the background. And so they're sort of living through their rearview mirror. They're trying to drive their car by looking backwards and saying, I can't get my finances right because last year's a mess or next year's a mess or whatever, or last 6 months, I haven't tabulated, I haven't entered my stuff. I don't know what to do. So for me, I just said, this is the line of demarcation. From this point forward, I'm going to do it right. So I called and I hired a bookkeeper, which was painful because number one, they charge a lot of money. And number two, they charge by the hour. And if you're a disaster and you're recording and you're like, if you're not really on top of it, it's going to cost more money than you need to spend or than you want to spend at a time when you actually need the money. Right. So, but I just decided like, I'm going to get this clear from this point forward. And then I'm going to work on the back stuff. And I hired an accountant to help me dig through it. Realistically, it took about 2.5 years for me to unwind the mess, rebuild it. And keep in mind, like I talk about this, I want most agents to understand my situation was a little different because I had a property management business, a real estate business, and I owned 40 apartments. And so this was like all in this big mess, right? And so it was all just sort of tangled up. What was interesting, what was actually fascinating was that about 1.5 years later, as we unwound it, my accountant said, Matt, this real estate sales business you've got is great. But I was I had such a mess from other stuff and all the debt and everything that had been built up that I couldn't even see that. So I didn't know what fire to put out first, right? So if I had an empty apartment, I would spend 2 days trying to rent an apartment instead of just focusing on selling another house where I would make more profit. But I didn't know what my profit and my loss was. So I just was always chasing whatever fire was burning the hottest. And so what my advice to people is number one, step one is get clarity. You literally just have to get clear. You got to clean the windshield. You got to say, I'm driving this car forward. The only way through is forward. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to understand how do I go forward from here with clarity. And that's actually, it's not rocket science. It starts with a profit and loss statement. I mean, that's it. You need a profit and loss statement. And if I may, I know I'm sort of ranting here, but
please.
The profit and loss statement, one of the downsides of what agents believe, and by the way, again, I was in this camp too. Most real estate agents don't hear that term profit and loss until they file their taxes. And it's because their accountant tells them, we're going to prepare your profit and loss for you in order to file your taxes. And so real estate agents mistakenly believe that the profit and loss statement is a tax thing. It's not a tax thing. Actually, it's not a tax thing at all. A profit and loss statement is the dashboard to the financial health and well-being of your business. And so you use that as a tool to make decisions every day. So that's how you run your business. It's like it's the speedometer, it's the oil gauge. It's, if you're driving a car, you have all these gadgets and bells and whistles on your dashboard. That's what your profit and loss statement is. So that's how you actually can look at in real time. Do I have a healthy business that's generating income and generating a profit, or do I have a business that's losing money, right? And that's how it starts. And so the first step is you need to get a profit and loss. And so a bookkeeper can prepare that for you. An accountant can prepare that for you. There's lots of software out there that can do that. I happen to have a software platform that I'm involved in that also does that. So there's a number of different ways to do it, but that's step one, is get clarity and get, by the way, for most of you out there, if you heard me say get a profit and loss and your first thought was, great, I'll go get QuickBooks and I'll do it myself. No, you won't. You probably won't do it. That's the other thing, is get clarity not only on what you need, but get clarity on what your aptitude is for doing it. If you're a salesperson, chances are behaviorally, you are never going to look forward to balancing your books and reconciling your checking account. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not your aptitude. There's no like judgment in it. You just have to be okay knowing that your highest probability to get to success around this is to get somebody else to do it or use a tool. That's it.
Right. Have awareness of where you might not have strengths and get that. That's nice. And I thought while you were saying this, like, agents preach, like coaches and everything, they preach goal setting and knowing your numbers and things like that, and knowing how many calls I need to make in order to, like work backwards. But it sounds like you can't even set those goals if you're not first clear on.
I mean, I always ask this question. If you were on Shark Tank, okay, and you were going to invest in a business, let's say you were one of the sharks, right? What's one of the most important things that you want to know? What's my return on investment going to be, right?
Yep.
Okay. We all know that, right? Like, you can ask every real estate agent loves watching Shark Tank because we're all entrepreneurially wired, and that's a great show, right? But the reality is we run our businesses every day without clarity about that. So we will invest every minute of our waking lives in a business that we have no idea what our return on investment is. And yet, if I were to ask somebody to write a check for $10,000, oh man, I'll bet you they want to see all the financials behind the business, but yet they'll run a business without it, right? The fact is that every real estate agent listening to this right now can make more money next year without selling not one single more house. They can just make more money by being conscious of what they're spending their money on. And I'm not talking about just like cutting expenses. I'm saying investing in smarter things, understanding where are you spending money that's producing the highest return. All of that information is available to you if you slow down long enough to get clarity around your financials. So it starts with clarity. Everything that we do now is always driven back to, does this make financial sense for the business? Not, will this generate more leads? Because production is what real estate agents love to talk about. Like you said, preach, preach, preach. Make calls, FSBOs, expireds, all that stuff. But the real story is, why are you doing all that? Are you doing it for the medals and the awards and the plaques, or are you doing it to make more money? Let me tell you the answer. The answer is you should be doing it to make more money, because if you make more money, you can actually invest in more stuff, which will make you grow the business faster. And then you can get all the awards, plaques, and medals that you want. Those things are actually real easy to get when you have clarity about your financials and you understand what to invest in.
Yeah, well, that actually, we sent out a survey to our customers to get some of the most burning questions about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And Don, one of our customers, Don, asked, where should I spend my money on my real estate business to get the most return on investment? So that was perfect.
Well, and it's probably one of the, the thing that's crazy is everybody wants to know that, because everybody's looking for a magic bullet. Here's the lame answer. That depends on you, John. What market are you in? What are you spending money on right now? Are you investing in your sphere? Are you investing, like, where does your current business come from? See, everybody's a different model. Do you have a big sphere? Is your sphere small? Is your database currently being fed, or is it brand new? Are you in a market where you have good market share in a specific geographic area? Because if you are, farming might be the answer. It really depends. But you're not going to know the answer to that until you look at, where are you currently getting the best return on investment? Because I could take 10 agents and all 10 of them would have a different story. I will tell you some common things just so that John doesn't feel like I dodged the question. Number one, your database, the people you know, will always be your highest return on investment. Always, always, always. You will always get the highest return from the people that you currently are in business with or in some relationship with, assuming that you're not a total jerk, right? That people like you, which most real estate agents are pretty likable. So, if you have people that the best thing to do is, invest in them. Invest in some way for those people to remember that you're a real estate agent, and they will remember you and refer you, and those referrals will always convert at a higher rate. That's a phenomenal one, tried and true. So that the best answer, invest in your database, the people you know. And if you don't have a bunch of people invest in getting to know people. That's the other, invest in finding more people that know who you are.
That's good. You touched on this other question a little bit. They said, what is the secret, interesting, to holding on to most of your earnings, but keeping your business stable and growing?
Awesome question. The secret is knowing what to invest in first,
Mhm.
second, third, right? It's kind of the theory of low-hanging fruit. So
Yeah.
I actually coined that inside of our business. I certainly didn't make up the term low-hanging fruit, but we run our business by the process of low-hanging fruit. We always look at every year, we evaluate how do we want to grow, what is our goal next year, and what is our fastest path to get there. Because what I've learned in the last 8 years of being very financially minded around the business is that when you invest in low-hanging fruit, it's cheaper to get it. It creates a higher yield, which then allows you to get further up the tree, right? It allows you to buy a bigger ladder, so to speak. So ask yourself, what is currently giving me the best return? And that's the thing to invest in, because it's the cheapest way to get. That's why I say database, because your database already knows you. Like, they're the closest thing to a referral because they already know you, trust you, and like you. And so it doesn't take much. It might be a $5 Starbucks gift card. And if you sent that to 100 people that you know with a little note that said, I want to buy you coffee because I know you're holding out on me, you must know somebody that needs to buy a house. Somebody's going to call you. And that is a $500 investment that could turn into a $10,000 commission, but it probably will work. And it's a small investment for a high yield. But most of us we don't know that. So then we just default to like, well, what is everybody else doing? Oh, they're calling strangers. Like, let me do that. Right. So
yeah, but I also like that you said it's different for everyone, because we get some of the best people on this podcast and they talk about what they're proficient in. Like, some people are proficient in social media. Others are like, they kill it with expireds or whatever it is. They have all these different ways. And it's probably because they know what gave them the best return on investment. And that's what they stuck to. Right.
And they got better at it and better at it and better at it over time. Like, the people that kill it with expireds, it's usually not because they were born with a natural aptitude to call expireds. Like, no one is born with that skill. It's not like, athletics, right? They might be good on the phone, et cetera, but the chances are they worked at it and they got better and better and better. So their conversion rates went up and up and up. And they probably tracked those numbers too, right?
Yeah.
Which, again, it's the language of business. The language of business is numbers. You've got to get okay with that. It's just part of how this thing works.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you probably wouldn't say, because a lot of agents hear all the stuff to do and then they spread themselves too thin trying to do so many different things. So you would say, find what is giving you the best return on investment and then get better at it.
That's the age old. I mean, that's like a whole shift in thinking or in the conversation. But the reality is the only way forward is through. And if you're not bored doing your job, you haven't done it long enough. Like, you should really, it's the fact, that's the facts, right? Like, if you're just doing it and saying, oh, this isn't working, time for me to do something else. Yeah, you're probably not going to succeed, because every single person you talk to that's had success in this business especially will tell you this business is simple, not easy, but it is simple. It's about number of people you talk to over and over and over again and deliver a message that says that you are the person that they need to think about whether those are strangers or people that you've known your entire life. That actually gets pretty boring after a while. I mean, my team and I, we sold probably 3,500 houses, and there's a lot of conversations to get to 3,500 sales with people that over and over and over again, right? I mean, it can be boring. What's not boring is when you get to the point where the machine starts working really well, and then you start to get into, what else do I want to do? And how do I want to enrich the people's lives who are in business with me? Or how do I want to reward the clients that have been the best to me? Like, that's not boring. But you don't get to do that until you hit a certain level of success doing the boring thing over and over and over again.
And that kind of goes into this question from Terry. They ask, how can you invest/grow in your business when you don't have the financial means to do so? So like marketing, like a lot of people want to buy like mailers and postcards and like things like that cost money. But if they don't have the money to do that, what would you say?
I love that question. I actually teach a class on this, and there's 4 stages of growth through real estate. And what happens is most agents get into the business, and what they see is the top producer that's been in the business for 15 or 20 years. And so they see that guy or that gal's face on a bus, on a park bench. They see all the advertising, they see the website ads, they see all that. And so a brand new agent comes in and says, boy, I need to do that because that must be what makes you successful. It's actually the opposite. Those people got success before they did that. And they did it by following a path. And so there's really 4 tiers to this. And the first one, and it starts everybody, and I'll make this analogy. This is really what we call the one-to-one. You're like a fisherman with a fishing pole. You, in the beginning, when you're brand new, you just have to become an expert at fishing with a fishing pole. You have to be able, and that's just one-to-one, one fisherman, one fish. You have to get out and you just have to fish all day. Cast the line, cast the line, cast the line. Eventually you catch enough fish that you can afford a net. And the net in our business, so the fishing is what you equate to prospecting. That's like just hitting the phones every single day. It requires you to do that. Doesn't actually matter who you call. You just have to realize, like, every time you pick up the phone and call, that's like casting a line in the water. Cast the line, cast the line, cast the line, right? Then you get to the point where you can afford a net, and a net is really that's advertising, right? So a net is like, now I've got enough fish that I can cast a net. And what I'm going to try to do with the net is get the phone to ring to me, right? I actually want the fish to swim up to the dock, right? So that's like throwing bread in the water or throwing a net in the water, because I'm going to get them to come to me. And people do that through a lot of different things, right? And we call it advertising, but that can be subscribing to something like REDX, right? It can be a source that refines the opportunity, right? Like that can be getting something that makes it more fertile ground, right? So we call that advertising. And by the way, I would put REDX into a category of advertising. It's a tool that allows you to get targeted toward a certain audience, which gives you an advantage, right? But you can't do that when you have no money. So you got to fish first, catch some fish, right? Then you got to invest in something like REDX, and then you got to do the next thing, right? Which is marketing. Now, the difference between advertising and marketing is really understanding that marketing is like fishing with a boat and sonar, okay? That's like saying, okay, here's what I figured out. I figured out that if I do these things, the fish swim up to the dock, and I can catch more of them when I throw a net in. So what I want to do is I want to put a boat out in the middle, and I want to try it in different spots and see which spots get the most fish. Because then what I can do is I can have fishermen on the boats casting lines in, and I can throw a net off the side of the boat. That is more expensive. Again, think about it. What's more expensive? The fishing pole, the net, the boat with a sonar, right?
Right.
And then the last thing that a real estate agent gets to do is branding. And this is what most agents start with, which is totally wrong, because nobody cares about your face on a bus. Nobody says, I really think we should sell the house. Let's call that person on the bus. Like, that's just not how consumers think, right? They need you when you're brand new. You've got to get in front of the customer, and that just requires more effort and energy and more labor. The person that has market share can put their face on a bus because they already are recognized. They see the bus, they see the sign, they go on Zillow, they see the number of people they see the listings you have, they see the reviews, you've got your website, your Facebook. The idea behind branding is to just be present everywhere, but nobody actually responds to a brand ad. So when you're brand spanking new agent, you just got to prospect. You got to prospect, and then you got to do a little advertising. But here's the thing. You can't do advertising until you have clarity about whether you're making money. So again, it goes right back to this thing is like prospect until you know that you have a profit. And how do you know you have a profit? Well, your business bills are paid, your lifestyle bills are paid, and there's a little bit left over. There's money to invest. And that money to invest is what will allow you to get the net. And then once you have a net and that's working, you say, oh, geez, I'm paying for the net and the net's paying for itself. I think I'm going to buy a boat. And then you go buy a boat, right? And then once the boat is paid for, then you say, you know what I really want to do? I'm going to buy another boat, and I want to put a skywriter across the top of the lake that says, fish, come eat my food, right? Something like that. So that's
and Donna asked, she said, how much should you reinvest back into your business? So it sounds like it really just depends on your business, right?
It depends on you. And that's a CEO level question, right? So it's a really great question, Donna, because the answer is it depends on what your goals are. If your goal is, and I'll just use numbers, but if your goal is to make $100,000 a year net, and that's what you just want to take home, and that's going to satisfy your needs and fulfill all of your hopes and dreams around what you expect your real estate business to do, then you should invest as much as you need to in order to make $100,000 as your net. If your goal is to make $1 million a year, you need to invest up to $1 million. You need to invest whatever it's going to take in order for that to happen. There's no right answer to that other than what is the outcome that you're trying to achieve. And that outcome is going to be directly related to what you invest in. And that's why you have to have clarity about it. So, I mean, that said, again, I don't want to dodge the question. I do want to be more clear. There are great models out there that give you clarity around financial percentages, what percentage should be invested here, what percentage should be invested there, based on best practices of people who came before you. And so the way to plug into that is to get a good coach who understands that. By the way, not all coaches are created equally. We know that. And so there are some coaches that are very skilled around this topic, and there are others that are not. And I'm not saying anyone in particular, but that's just the reality. So if getting clarity around your financials is a priority to you, then what you need to do is make sure that your coach has clarity around financials and that they can coach and guide you around where the right investments should be.
Yeah. And there was another question that was asking, like, what percentage should I allocate to retirement and things like that? But would you just say go to somebody that has those models? Or,
I mean, it's such a great, these are all they're the right questions, probably in the wrong order, right? Like, it's like, I don't know. That depends on how much money you're making, right? Like, so how much should you allocate toward retirement? I don't know. Are you profitable? Are you making enough money to invest in retirement, right? Like, I can remember, and here's a great example of the right question in the wrong order. I remember when I was struggling financially, that my father-in-law, who's incredibly conservative, amazing guy, self-made. I went to him and I was like, God, I'm struggling. Like, I can't figure this stuff out. And he was one of the mentors in my life. But his early advice, he had worked a W-2 job his whole life. His early advice was pay yourself first. And I was like, okay, I hear you, but how do you pay yourself first when you have a bunch of other things that need to get paid or the lights go off? Like, I don't understand, like, conceptually, I couldn't get that. And he's like, well, if you just invest compound interest, it's linear thinking. It doesn't work. Like, what I had to do, his advice wasn't right for me. And so it depends. Like, the first question is, are you profitable? And is the profit that you're generating more than enough for you to achieve all your goals? If it is, then the rest you should be investing. How do you invest in retirement? That depends. There's a lot of different investment vehicles, 401k, real estate, a lot of different things you can do, stock market, etc.
Yeah. Nice. Well, and Amanda, one of our live viewers, just chimed in. She asked, how long do you pay for marketing/prospecting systems before you end your subscription due to low performance? Like, how long do you give something a chance?
I feel like such a broken record. It's so unfair because the answer is, it depends. Here's what I mean by that. Now, there's every investment that you make, you should enter it with an exit strategy. So this is the way I would answer that question. A great example, I'm going to give two examples. Internet leads. Okay. Yeah. We can all go buy internet leads. They're all over the place. There's a million different places you can buy internet leads. Leads are us, right? Joe Schmo's internet leads, whatever. People can generate internet leads. The thing about internet leads that are great is they show up, right? And when they show up, you can make a phone call. You can figure out what's my conversion rate from phone call to contact. You can figure out, if I contact them, how many of them are agreeing to meet with me, how many of them that meet with me agree to sign an agreement, and how many of those agreements actually turn into a closing. And you can figure that out pretty quick. 30 to 60 days, right? Maybe 90 days tops before you have enough data to figure out, did that work or didn't it, right? So with internet leads, it's somewhere between 30 and 90 days. You should be able to figure that out. And that's a tried and true methodology. And internet leads are cheap enough that you can get enough volume to figure out if that's the right thing. Now, somebody might say, I hate internet leads. They're all buyers. I want listings. That's not the right performance model for me. I don't like that kind of a model. And by the way, there's another thing out there called farming and geographic farming. Again, tried and true. I don't care what era we're in, geographic farming still works, but it doesn't work in 30 to 90 days. It's a long time. Okay. So you can invest in geographic farming and you can take a neighborhood of 2,000 households or make it even smaller, 500 households, and you can invest $1,000 a month in marketing to those 500 households. But you're not going to get $1,000 a month back probably for 12 to 18 months. Now, the thing is, though, that when you farmed a neighborhood for 12 to 18 months, you're going to probably start to dominate that neighborhood in 12 to 18 months, which means that you will spend $12,000 to $18,000. But if it's the right neighborhood at the right price point, you might generate $15,000 to $20,000 per month out of that same neighborhood, which is a great investment, right? But so it depends. What is the model that you're approaching? What is this tactic? And this is when I say you got to put your CEO hat on and you've got to decide, what am I investing in and what are my expectations from this investment? And by the way, I hate to say this, broken record, that means you need to have clarity around the financials in your business and what your business can afford. So how many agents have said, hey, I tried geographic farming, it didn't work. And I'll coach an agent and I'll say, well, tell me what you did. Well, I sent a postcard out when I listed a house. Awesome. That's not geographic farming, right? Like that's not actually what you did. You just sent a postcard out. Like, well, it didn't work. I spent $200 on a postcard and nobody called me. Yeah, no one. Of course they didn't. They threw it out. Like you have to send that thing like 35 times before they actually start to be like, every month, this guy sends me a stupid postcard that I throw out. And then they decide they're going to sell their house. They go, I need to sell it with that guy that sends me the postcard every month. Like that works, but it takes a long time. And so the answer to that question is it depends on what you're investing in.
Yeah. And another question, and it seems like no matter what questions, it kind of goes back to the whole clarity thing. Like probably the number one question that was asked on our survey is, what is your breakdown of your spending from you get a commission check and what do you do with those things? And I think that's what you're talking about is, well, that's why you need clarity so that once you get that check, you know exactly where it's going.
Well, and I teach a class where I've been teaching it all throughout New England for like the last 3 years, because obviously I'm super passionate about this because it was a game changer for me. Totally. And the class, we call it Profit by the Numbers. And you know, it's a totally unsexy name, but the reality is that there's these 3 action steps that need to be taken in order for somebody to just start with clarity and get to the point where they know what those numbers are. And it really is, it's this like, clarity isn't just what's your business doing. Clarity is what's going on in your life. Because if your life expenses are outpacing your business production, like problem solved. Like, you know what I mean? You have to figure that out, right? That's a step one, right? And then you need to be able to generate enough income to pay your bills, pay your business bills, and pay your taxes. So then it's like this triple decker sandwich, which you have to get clarity on. Then you know what moving forward is. So your profit and loss statement inside of your business needs to start by generating enough income for you to pay your bills, right? Yeah. Like if your home expenses are $5,000 a month to pay your mortgage, your car payment, your groceries, whatever, your student loan payments, whatever that is, if it costs you $5,000 a month and your business is profiting $2,000, you're going in debt to a tune of $3,000 a month. Like, but here's the problem. Real estate agents have access to all the money, so they get to spend the $5,000 a month and feel like they're making enough money, but they're not. They're just going into debt in other places, credit cards or the IRS or a car that's upside down or whatever it is. They're just not keeping up. And by the way, the more they sell, typically, the more they start spending in their personal life because the habits and foundation aren't there. And so I know, and by the way, again, I speak to this from personal experience and from coaching agents about it. There's nothing, this is normal. Like anybody that's listening to this, that's like feeling bad, just get over it. Like forgive yourself. This is totally normal. Most agents suffer from this and they just don't have anybody that's around. Number one, there's personal kind of like embarrassment and shame about it. I lived through it. Nobody knew that I was financially struggling. In my market center, in my office, when I showed up, people thought I was a rock star because I was selling so many houses. I wasn't like going in and being like, gosh, I'm broke. I was like, yeah, give me the medals. I'm awesome. I'm awesome. Like, nobody wants to talk about that. But it's fine. Like I'll come out and be super vulnerable about my life story because I want people to understand, like, you're not alone. It's normal. You just got to make a decision to fix it. And it actually is super fixable. So like you can build a massive business if you start with this thing. It's so foundational and so important. So
yeah, that's why it makes sense to talk about it and why we're having this podcast is, the whole purpose of this podcast is to help agents create stability and opportunity in their business. And so we haven't talked about any of this stuff as of yet. And so to be able to have this conversation it's mind-blowing to me that it's taken this long, because it's so foundational and so important. Because if you're not clear on the money you're bringing in, then what's the point? What are you doing in real estate, right?
And I mean, I could get really deep about this and kind of drill down, but one of the reasons that it never comes up is because, number one, it's personal. People are embarrassed about their situation most of the time, or they're not being honest with themselves about their situation. And just like I thought I was only one sale away from getting out of it, right? But that pattern just repeated itself long enough for me to have a slap across the face and a wake-up call. And some people are able to fake it so long that it just becomes the norm for them. They're just always in that up and down and that flow of like, oh, I made some money in the spring, but now I'm broken at Christmas time, but I made money again. Yeah. And, that's not really a path forward. So people don't talk about it. People don't ask about it. It never comes up as like a top thing that people want to talk about, because nobody wants to raise their hand and say, hey, I'm kind of struggling with this. But I can tell you with 100% certainty, it is pervasive, because I talk about it, and every room that I'm in, people go, yeah, me too. Like, yeah, I know. Yeah. Like just, we just have to have a better dialogue around it industry wide, so that we can start helping people, because it's just really like a solvable problem.
Yeah, it's just not talked about. So then there's no,
because it's embarrassing, and we're all about ego. Like, think about, this is the industry that launched glamour shots. Like, we put our pictures on everything. Like, this is a business that's loaded full of people that like to look good. Again, I'm one of you. Like, I get it, but looking good and actually being good, like the foundation of living a great life, you have to have good financials. It's inherent in what this business is about. You got to make enough money to support your family and do the things that you want to do, so that you can reinvest not only in your business, but in your community, in the things you care about. Maybe your kids' college education, all that stuff. It doesn't happen unless you make money. So do that.
Hey, well, we're running out of time, but I just want to ask this last question. And this comes from Kat, and she asks, how do you organize all of this stuff? How do you keep track of everything? I mean, you can hire it out, I guess, but
well, so there, I have like a plug for a software company that I actually founded and own, which is called reprofit.com. And we actually, so in that process of me uncovering, and I think that's obviously how you guys found me and asked me to be here, right? Because I, founded a software company that focuses on—
Perfect question to ask you.
Yeah, it's fun, and thanks for the softball. But, it focuses on financials, and, so reprofit.com is spelled PROPHET. We founded that company, myself and my business partner, specifically to help agents with this exact problem. And it's a fully automated platform that links directly to agents' business and personal bank accounts, translates the transaction data that's inside of the bank accounts into a fully operational real-time profit and loss statement that then calculates out a return on investment that tells you what money you're spending is actually producing a real return and giving you an upside. I mean, that's the tool that I obviously would recommend. And it's a really, really user-friendly tool. Anybody that wants to take advantage of that can, I imagine you guys will put my contact info. Anybody can contact me directly. Just send me an email. It's Matthew Miale at reprofit.com, and we'll set everybody up with a free trial and live onboarding to get it tested out. And we're actually doing a thing now where if you're listening to the podcast and you're saying, geez, I'd love to do that for 2021, but my 2020 is a mess. We're actually running a promo right now through the end of the year where if you sign up now, we will actually retroactively get your 2020 books ready to file your taxes so that you can have your 2020 books in perfect working order, and your 2021 will be teed up and ready to go and fully automated and operational, so that moving forward, you're just rocking and you have clarity around it. We do 15-minute Financial Fridays, which we launch live every Friday on our Facebook page, which is a 15-minute Q&A with top producers around the industry, talking about what is it that they do inside of their financials. So that's a quick hit that when you're part of our system, you get access to that. And then we do a 30-minute, about 5 to 10 times a year, we do these 30-minute success sessions where we bring in and we do kind of a live mastermind with our VIP clients. So, it's somebody that wants to have success in this space. There are tools and resources out there. And then that also said, Haley, I am an open book. I hope that came through in the podcast here. I am absolutely willing to help and coach and counsel anybody else that's out there. If RE Profit isn't for you, that's fine. You probably need to hire a bookkeeper, because chances are you, as a real estate agent, with all the things that you have to do, showing, scheduling appointments, getting listings live, putting photos up, navigating your MLS, maybe if you're running a small team, taking care of your agents, taking care of your admins, all of that stuff, chances are you're not the bookkeeper, and you shouldn't be the bookkeeper. So if a platform like RE Profit's not for you, then the right way to do it is to hire somebody to do it for you, because otherwise it's not going to happen. Chances are it's not going to happen, because as soon as the phone rings and there's a listing opportunity, you're out the door, guaranteed. So
that's awesome. Well, we had Kathy in the chat that said, thanks, Matt. I need this ASAP. So
awesome. Kathy, send me an email, Matthew Miale at reprofit.com, and profit spelled like the prophet, Prophet. Just go ahead and email me, and I'll get you set up on a trial.
Okay, yeah, and we'll put all of the contact information in the notes of this podcast. If you're listening to it on, no matter where you're at, if you're on the website or anything, we'll put all of that in the description below. But thank you so much, Matt, for coming. This has been an amazing 50 minutes, a lot of value for people, especially, I mean, even just for me, it's just been awesome to learn more about stuff that maybe we don't talk about enough. So thank you so much for coming on. This has been awesome.
Well, I hope it was valuable for everybody. And, keep us in mind if you ever have any referrals in the state of Connecticut. We are the #1 production team here in Connecticut statewide. So awesome. We'll take great care of your clients here too. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks. And for all of the people that are listening, if you want to continue conversations like this, we have our Facebook group that you can go to, REDX Elite Prospectors Group, or if you're a customer, check out our forum. We have conversations like these happening, or you can continue all the things that we're talking about. If you're new to the podcast and want to catch up on past episodes, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, anywhere that you like to listen to this kind of stuff. And you can subscribe on our website, theredx.com, to receive emails and updates about the show. So thank you again, Matt. This has been awesome. And we will see everybody next Thursday at 1:30.
Thank you.